So recently Tony Blair did another recent speech. In fact, I think Tony Blair is spot on. And let me say this now. Prime Ministers in my lifetime, I think he's the best Prime Ministers we've had. Now bear in mind, Prime Ministers in my lifetime, John Major, Blair, Brown, Cameron, May. Those are the 5 Prime Ministers I have had in my lifetime. So, going through all this, I think Blair has really, really changed himself. Because you've only got to look at his new website, his Global Institute, where he wants to make, and his slogan is make globalization for the many, not the few. And I think he has a lot of really good policy ideas. For one of the things he wants to do is he wants to now create how we have like a Minister for Health, Culture, Foreign Affairs, and all that. One of the things he wants to create is a digital media, a digital cabinet position, a guy who looks at all this and says, do we need regulation on this, and things like that, things that are coming forward. He's also pushing for people who lose their jobs through automation should have the ability to go and retrain from a government fund in any area they want, and basically have that safety net. If they lose their job, they can go and retrain. That money there is available for them to do that. I think that's an incredibly good idea. Now, on to his comments about Brexit, because this was a recent interview he had shortly after he gave that speech. Now, this is Blair's opinion on what is going to happen to it. So, he basically puts it like this. Brexit is a symptom of a disease. And now he goes on to talking about what deals are going to happen, basically. And he says there'll be 4 different outcomes. So this is quoting from what Blair said in this interview. So, we will probably get a deal of some sort, but it's going to be ugly and damaging. And he sketches out, 6 possible end games. First, admit we made a mistake and stay in the EU. Second, negotiate reforms and stay in the resulting Europe. Third, leave the political institution and stay in the single market and customs union as a rule taker but not a rule maker. The 4th option is where Theresa May and Philip Hammond are. This is what they want to leave Europe but still remain close ties to Europe. It's kind of leave without leaving. I personally think it's incredibly difficult to negotiate, far more than they think at the moment. The 5th option is to leave and make yourself as non-Europe as possible. The course threatened by Hammond earlier this year and beloved by the libertarian wing of the Brexit movement. The 6th opinion is to leave with no deal at all. And that's basically the situation they're in. And I think he makes an incredibly good point. I think there should be an option that, yeah, we made a mistake. We fucked up. But the idea that what Theresa May wants to do is leave without leaving, essentially. And being this outlier is going to incredibly damage our economy. Incredibly damage our economy. Because here's the thing. If you want to trade with Europe, then you still have to follow their rules. And if you want to send products to Europe, you are now going to have to deal with longer wait times. Or if you want to receive stuff from Europe, you will now have to wait longer to get it. And bear in mind, when it comes to infrastructure in this country, we lag behind the rest of Europe, to a point where it takes an extra 2 weeks to receive things that are essential to maybe the running of the business or manufacturing, things like that. That's extra time, and that's loss of business. That just makes that company completely, uncompetitive in, a European market. And you can talk about world economy and all this, and we'll change them for, trading with the rest of the world. That takes even longer. Like, you can't, to get a ship, like a big trade ship, from here to India, the course is literally, let's say, I don't know, Portsmouth, it's sailing out of. So think about it. Out from the Channel, out around France, down through Spain, round Spain, into the Mediterranean, possibly through the Suez Canal. Actually, no, yeah, it has to go through the Suez. So through the Suez, then down through the Gulf of Aden, then across and into whichever port it goes to in India. That is not a short journey on one of these ships. You are talking at least a month, maybe more, for it to get there, and for one to get back. Trying to change your supply chains from a non-European to somewhere else is going to be monumentally difficult for a lot of these companies. It is going to make them even more uncompetitive in this global market. And I suspect we are going to see lots more companies either move out of the UK, which many are positioning themselves to do so. You had one recently who, for years after making the acquisition, kept their foot both in London and in Amsterdam. Brexit happens and they're like, well, that's made our decision, we're just going to move everything to Amsterdam. This is going to happen more and more, I suspect, as this goes on. And we are in March now. And I said March will be where it starts. Well, April now. And we are going to see things, I think, move at a more and more faster pace now. So there are more companies planning to move. They're waiting now to see what happens in these negotiations. And I guarantee you, because these negotiations are not going well, because we do not hold any cards, despite what the Brexiteers say, we are going to get shafted. Because this idea of global Britain that all these Brexiteers had existed when we had an empire. And we could just tell people what to do. And just say, you're going to do this for us. Okay, fine. We'll just turn up with a battleship, park it outside, your port, and we're just going to sink any ships that come in or out of that port. We cannot engage in gunboat diplomacy anymore. That is just not something you can do. But yeah, this is and I think Blair's right in this, that it's a libertarian pipe dream that a lot of these people are trying to push. When it's not, we often get compared to, we can become the Singapore of the EU. If you look how Singapore became so rich, it had nothing to do with just open its floodgates and just being, open and free. It got that way by closely regulating itself with its biggest and strongest market, which was China. So, will that happen? No, because as these guys have said, well, we don't want to follow these regulations. And it's very telling that a lot of these regulations, because a lot of these guys have come out and said, like the guy Dyson wants to get rid of, minimum wage. He wants to get rid of, the working hours time. He wants to make people work unpaid overtime. These are the things that we are going to lose. That for years, labour movements fought so hard to actually gain and get. And now, through Brexit, we're just going to give it away. And the worst thing is that these labour movements no longer exist. Well, they do to some extent, but they're not as powerful as they used to be. So if, for example, Dyson gets his wish and you are now forced to work unpaid overtime, what do you do? Do you go out and protest? Do you vote people in, which will be Labour? Because I tell you now, a Conservative Party under Jacob Rees-Mogg will be trying to loosen as many regulations as he possibly can. So don't be fooled by him as well, people, because good God. So for once, please, don't ignore, your bad feelings about Tony Blair and genuinely listen to what he's got to say, particularly in his, go and listen to his speech he recently made. In fact, go and listen to them both. He made just recently and one last year. Because he makes incredibly good points, and John Major as well, about all this. About there is no economic upside to being, outside of the European Union. That's the situation we're in. Because so far, there has been no good news about us leaving the EU, and this is the thing. This idea that it will be better is based on a fantasy. It's based on lies and deceit, and that is the worst thing ever. Because I dealt with my start of this channel was dealing with people who were selling, quack treatments. And to me, there has been no difference between a quack selling, this miracle cure for cancer and a leader of the Brexiteers movement saying that Britain will somehow be better off. To me, there's very little difference.